How many of you have heard about NKN before he read out? So I see about 2-3 hands going up, maybe 10 in a hall of perhaps about 200-300 people. This is supposed to be a pan-India network. It connects all the institutions that you can imagine and all the institutions that you can't even imagine that exist in this country. The poverty level, as we call it, the minimum connection speed is about a gigabit per second. And when you reach 80% of it, it automatically goes to 10 gigabit per second. And as all Indians would like it, it's all free. Nobody charges you for it as an organization. It's about 1.5 billion US dollar equivalent effort. And it saves the country about $500 million every year for the last 7-8 years. That means we have exceeded our investment already in the course of the establishment of the network itself. So what's new about it? And what has cybersecurity got to do with this infrastructure? I'm not only talking to you people, I'm also talking to one other person, an important person in this country, called Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Because on one side you have users, on the other side you have the infrastructure. The users' expectations are that it should be natural, it should be simple, it should be safe, it should be dependable. You should have confidence in using that infrastructure in your natural course of work without worrying about anything. There were questions about, security, privacy, somebody watching me over my shoulders, etc., etc. These are all natural questions that come from human beings. Because as human beings, we want ultimate comfort in our lives, including when we access digital space. So how do you provide an ultimate convenience to the end user? I should be allowed to buy any mobile phone I want. I should be allowed to link with any service provider. I should be allowed to do any transaction. I should be allowed to have my account in any bank. I should be allowed to manage my wealth the way I want, which means I'm going to create transactions. Why does a normal person like cash? What is the unique property of cash that attracts you? Any idea? The only unique property of cash is anonymity. It can be in anybody's hand, it can go into anybody's hand. You can attach any motive behind the accumulation of that. I'm not worried about that. Anonymity has been a greatest convenience that human beings have experienced all along. So that's why even those parts of the world which have supposedly extremely good cyber infrastructure still value cash transactions. So if you suddenly go digital, two things happen. One, you as a end user feel a psychological inconvenience. It's not actually inconvenience, it's a psychological inconvenience. The second thing is, suddenly on a network infrastructure or a cyber infrastructure or the digital infrastructure that you have in your country, the load goes up by an order of magnitude, for which it may or may not have been designed earlier. It's like driving an old motorcycle or a motor car to race with a Lamborghini. you can see the difference. If you don't know Lamborghini, I'll say Mercedes-Benz. Because I believe Lamborghini is the costliest that you can buy today. So that's a kind of scale difference you have in transaction volumes. So what does one do? What happens as a consequence of that? In one of the slides, Balakrishnan showed things like IoT, Internet of Things. Basically, it says your source of digital information can be from anywhere. Up to about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, your source of digital information was only email. You ask anybody what you are using a network for, he will say email and browsing. These are nothing. These are nothing. There are no time constraints in all this. Because you are dealing with human interaction times. The second thing that happens is, from there you shift towards online transaction. Suddenly what you are not aware of, quote unquote, you become aware of. 10, 20 years ago, if you want to draw cash from the bank, you will go to the bank, go to your counter, present your withdrawal form or a check, self-check. They'll give you a token. With that, you will wait. Some number will come. The number started coming later. Somebody will shout your name and then you go there and get the cash. Why am I telling you all this? Known thing. As soon as the token is given to you, your bank account has been debited, which means you have lost the cash. Where is your cash at that point? It is in transit between the guy who gave you the token and to the guy who is going to supposedly give you cash in the future. Time elapsed is about 10 to 15 minutes if you are lucky. Otherwise, you wait longer. What happens in the ATM world? You say your intention through a card and pressing a buttons, and then you expect the cash to come back. What's a failure in the previous case? Failure as robbing a bank. Everything is stalled. Suddenly power is switched off. Nothing is affected because it's there on the paper. As soon as the UPS starts or power starts, your transaction starts smoothly. There is no loss. But the price you pay is the time. When you buy time, and as you move time from these 15 minutes, 30 minutes to something closer to seconds, milliseconds, nanoseconds, challenges come. Because reconciling any changes in a very short time across geographically separated recording instruments is a difficult process because they themselves take time to talk to each other. So if a moment you ask for ATM and it goes and asks the bank, computer or whatever, and he says, okay, give him the cash, it has debited. If that point power fails, or the connection fails, the service fails, for whatever reason, there's a hold up somewhere, you don't get your cash. And then the process of reinitializing it to the point of start is extensive on the part of the consumer. Because always the provider of the service, the holder of your assets on your behalf, plays safe by keeping it with himself and then saying, you prove that you are what you claim to be you are. Obviously, a normal human being is driven to a state of anger because the convenience is taken away. What you bargain for is 30 minutes wait, 15 minutes wait, 10 minutes wait to a few milliseconds and you take cash, put in your pocket and go away. From there, a failure is intolerable. So this is the part that pains an infrastructure designer. This is what is called a dependable system by the consumer. This is what is called a reliable network by a designer. A fail-proof, fault tolerant, reliable network. In between this, if somebody plays havoc, which was extensively referred to by Professor Balakrishnan and Narendra Nath as cyber-related cross activities, cyber crime, cyber terrorism, cyber whatever, the impact on the end user is multifold because system comes to a halt. So how do I create a system which discovers itself, which prepares itself for tomorrow, which prepares itself for the onslaught of transactions in a very large number, is the problem that everybody is grappled with today. The awareness of cyber-related activities will take you only to increase the transactions because I'm aware of it. If I say it is secure, go ahead and use it, more people will use it. I'm increasing the load on my system. Why am I saying all this? If you look at an average university across this country, university, institution of this kind, IIT and so on, in fact, this CSIR kind of system, if you say cockroach, there is a special lab, there is a frog, there is a separate lab and so on. There are so many research labs. I mean, that's on the lighter side. I'm not saying anything about derogatory about these labs, but that's the kind of special labs that we have across the country. All of them generate data. All of them want to share. All of them want to interact. And all of them are large volume. These average universities have about 100 places where classes take place, lectures take place from 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning till about 1, 2 in the afternoon. Continuously, day after day. And there is a potential to share it across the nation. There is nothing prevents you from taking a credit from Delhi University, JNU, JNTU, SV University, Andhra University, put it together and get a degree. Nothing prevents you. It lies in the realm of academic administrative decisions of recognizing this possibility and then saying yes. If correcting the papers is a problem, you can put a limit of 200 people who can do this method and the rest of the people who can audit and gain in terms of knowledge, quote unquote. These are possibilities that emerge. When you expand a system and when you compress the time, obviously there is an opportunity for wrong elements to play a critical role. It's not that they are required in that sense. A critical role in the sense they are interfering with our critical infrastructure. When we say about bank and theft, we understand simply, somebody is taking away the cash. But when you say a scientific laboratory and then some data is stolen, you don't understand immediately the impact. It could be that, the next breather engine is already developed and available, the data is stolen. We don't know. So what is being stolen and its value of what is being stolen is known to a set of people. So they try to protect it. That means protection is basically you limit the exposure of whatever material that you have. You protect the house, you only allow your own family to come in. Everybody else have to ask, knock and wait or book and whatever. So you create a small world around it. How do you create a small world in a large population? How do I know who you are? So it comes identity crisis. Is it the Aadhaar card? Is it my income tax card? Is it my passport? Everything is an ID for me. I can randomly show something and walk in, walk out. In the physical world, they want only a photo ID. In fact, these days I wear this cap because my children want me to look young always. I am not responsible for this. It costs a lot of money, and they very generously bought a couple of them for me, and they very generously paid it by my credit card because they know the PIN number. That's the world we live in. Is it a cyber crime? No. Perhaps. I don't know. So this is what happens. If somebody knows the credentials, they can potentially use it. And they can use it for your benefit, they can use it for their benefit or anybody's benefit. What happens when this identity has to be established? That too for a very large number of people. Whose identity do you trust? And if you have identity, whose authorization do you trust? Is it a single identity and a single party authentication, or is it multiple? Will Airtel accept the identification of the Vodafone or somebody else? What kind of handshake takes place when business interests are involved? This makes the problem of infrastructure more complex. You started with 30 minutes to 30 milliseconds. You want everything instantly in this world, right? That's why the McDonald's and Subs, etc., they survive. Dosa takes time. That too, well done one. Takes time. When you compress time, you buy these additional problems of what are the things I had to give away. For human beings, giving away something that they hold dear is extremely difficult. That's why Gita, Bhagavan says, Sarva dharman paritijya mameva saranam vraja. Today network says, Sarva identity paritijya mameva saranam vraja. Every infrastructure says. How can there be so Lord Krishna, so many of them? There can be only one Lord Krishna. And among them, they don't agree who is the Supreme Lord. So the Lord bargains with each other. When they talk to each other, they take enough time. This is one part of the problem. I am telling you these things in the large simply because these are the ones which are holding back solutions to what you want. And these are the ones on which you can work and be creative. And creativity creates an opportunity for yourself, and then you can do some innovation around it. So when these reconciliations take place, either they are on data or on identification or authorization systems or across these individual holders of entities, either commercial or government, the reconciliation process is undefined to a very large extent. They are defined for the bilateral convenience. They are overseen for regulatory convenience. They are monitored for operational convenience. The enforcement to comply with this 30 milliseconds or 1 second or whatever is the weak point. And when the largeness increases, the transaction volume increases, and the source of digital information volume increases, and the source of digitized information volume increases, it compounds. So in spite of technology, in spite of availability of various things, in spite of apparent conveniences, you still use a mobile phone by and large for making and receiving calls. In fact, if you take a random poll here, people who are above 50 years of age will have that numbered telephone with keypad and all that. In that age group of 30 to 50, they will have a semi-smartphone, and less than 30, and perhaps somebody like me who is a geek will have yesterday's iPhone. They all have different capabilities. You take 100 photographs where you would have borrowed a single photograph with great difficulty 10 years ago in a congress like this. Just look around how many videos are made here, that too by youngsters. They simply click. What to do with it? I don't know. Where do you store? Cloud. Whose cloud is it? Who regulates it? Nobody's idea. Did you take permission before recording Raghavan's lecture? Who cares? These become issues in society. So when you express that, you can express to an audience because we have a bilateral agreement through the organization. But when you express what I expressed to a larger audience, you require that bilateral arrangement to be extended to that larger audience. And I am a key part. And you take a unilateral decision. When unilateral decisions are taken in societies, problems do occur. Wait here. This is the problem. He took 25 minutes. He is not giving me more than 15 minutes. And I am supposed to do the same effectiveness as he. And he was born 2-3 years earlier. He says, don't waste time. But this is what happens in a bilateral conversation between organization systems. They do talk to each other. They are very active. You always get the response saying that your request is under process. You never know where the resolution will come. This is what I mean by the convenience. So what's the need of the hour when we say cybersecurity as users is this convenience, naturalness, dependability and so on. When nation state makes a statement, it is about protecting you from invasion through the cyberspace. That's why he very vehemently justified observation from the sky, through the road, whatever mechanism that is possible. There are CCTV cameras all over. Nobody took your permission for doing it. But they are supposed to catch criminals, not you. Unless you are a criminal yourself. Then you have no right to object. So there are facilities that are created, and in the process of creation of these facilities, many equipment will come from all over the world. Because that's a different process of procurement. They will always provide things which are least cost and functional to the absolute minimal limit as specified by your requirement for purchase. And that's what Narendranath explained, saying, how do they make sure that conformance takes place to the requirement? Not of the equipment specification, your requirement specification. So these multifaceted problems of cybersecurity, while it requires articulation at the highest level of government as policy, followed by regulations, followed by law, and followed by rules. I think the other way around. Law, then regulations, rules, and then there are enforcement agencies, and then the mechanisms. But any system, when it becomes large, it works in silos. A family, when it has 5 boys and 5 girls, and 5 daughter-in-laws and 5 damads, and they start working in silos, you know how cohesive the family can be and how forgiving the father and mother had to be. That is what the cyberspace of today have to be. That forgiving, at the same time protecting, oldest father and mother that we can find in the largest family possibly imagined. Thank you.